Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market, that is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet. Loaded up for discussion today. We have Eigenlayer announces Eigen Season 2 stake drop. Bored Ape Yacht Club announcing new Dookie Dash game beginning September the 12th with a $1 million prize. And Deepin Protocol Grass, who reward users for their unused internet, announced their airdrop checker 2. Big question for the day: is airdrop season back, or will it be good as well as we roll into September? We've also got the latest on price action on crypto and NFTs as usual, and some further discussion on the founder of PG Group and Redacted Coins take the NFT founders supporting other NFT projects is conducive to success. Stay tuned for that. Today we've got Legendary and Sammy in the co-host seats, and we're ready to get into it. But just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say here is financial advice, because this market is very risky and we do not know anything for sure, unfortunately. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, it is Thursday, the 5th of September. Legendary, how are you doing?
GM, doing quite well. It's good to see that we now also have Sammy streaming to his audience, so more distribution channels. I have put out this tweet a couple days ago, last week, that I feel like we are one of the few spaces to do that we really try to distribute from as many channels as possible, because some people follow one of us, not all of us. Some people just have different rankings and ratings in the algorithm and are more likely to see one of us going live. And it's a very, very nice way how we managed to kind of increase our numbers from when we only did spaces, and we used to have around 250-ish live listeners, to now in the range from between 500 to 550 if we count together spaces and the video distributions on X without the people watching in on YouTube.
I like it. I like adding more distribution channels. The cool thing, we were just talking beforehand, the cool thing is in StreamYard, you get this feature where you're basically, it asks, everyone can actually distribute it in their own way as well. Like, it's customizable. Sammy was asked before, what do you want the title to be? Like, you can all kind of frame the show in your own way. Sam, how does it feel getting some extra distribution? How many of your followers do you think know your face? Because you're not someone who posts yourself that much, I don't think.
Probably, to be honest, most of the guys that I meet in person, so probably be you guys and people I've met at conferences, and maybe people that look in on your streams occasionally. But yeah, I don't tend to post too much about my face on Twitter. Maybe it's like, I'd say pseudo-anonymous.
So getting it out there a little bit more. I remember the first time you started joining and some of your followers saw you for the first time, I think they were quite impressed. I think they were quite impressed with what they saw. How did you deal with that?
Well, I think it was the Sammy Blue Eyes thing took off a little bit. And then I think there was just the way the light hit my eyes, just glistened a little bit. So, but I think that's becoming more jaded the bear market goes on. So yeah.
People care less about your appearance the less the market is going up. I think that's probably fair to say. Look, let's get into it. As always, we've got the price action, we've got the headlines, and we've got a whole load of discussion coming up today. Big question for today is airdrop season back? Certain ones just are like coming back round. We said there's been a huge holiday period over the summer for all tokens of all kinds, and now I think we're going to see a big backlog coming through to the market. So we'll discuss a little bit of how we see that happening moving forward. So starting with the price action, let's hit the majors first. We've got Bitcoin at 56K, around about flat. ETH also flat around 2.3K, just under 2.4. Solana is up a few percent at $132. Getting into the main headlines for today, we have EigenLayer announcing the Eigen Season 2 airdrop. Obviously, EigenLayer, the huge Ethereum restaking protocol, has done one airdrop already, but that token was non-transferable. So now that token, the Season 2 is happening, and that the token is going to become transferable pretty soon. Number 2, Bored Ape Yacht Club announced new Dookie Dash game beginning September the 12th with a $1 million prize. And finally, the Deepin protocol Grass, who rewards users for their unused internet, announced that airdrop tracker is live today too. I've seen a little bit of disappointment around that. Want to check in with Sam on that in particular, because he's very big on Deepin and also has been using Grass. We'll get some more specific context there. Some notable sales from around the space. Got a CryptoPunk Big Beard selling for 35.9 ETH. Xcopy Rabble continuing to do really well. Xcopy is on fire, 15.65 ETH. And a Rafiq Anadol Winds of Yawanawa selling for 12 ETH. That collection doubled in floor price in the last 48 hours from around 3.6 ETH to over 7. Legendary, that is the price action and the headlines. Should we go over to our NFT marketplace partner, Mintify, to find out what's going on over there?
Yeah, let's do it. Today I want to take a look at maybe a couple more collections than we usually do. It's a bit of a greener day for NFTs, at least, that is. Bored Apes up a touch, 1.7% up over the last 24 hours, sitting at an 11.44 ETH floor. Pudgies are up a bit more, up 2.5% over the last day, 10.6 ETH floor. Azukis are pretty much flat, 4.75 ETH floor. Miladies are seeing the first green day in a while, in a bit more than a week, up 3.14% at a 3.34 ETH floor. We've been talking about the eggs for the last 2 or 3 days. There's definitely a significant dip. They touched, or they peaked at 0.35 ETH in terms of the floor price, have corrected a fair amount and are back down to 0.18 ETH. Still very impressive in terms of the daily volume, still 100 ETH in volume, where other typical collections get 10 to 20 ETH volume over 24 hours. And obviously still up a 20x from the mint price. The second collection that I want to touch on is Ether, the anime collection that was basically viewed as a potential Azuki competitor, had a very hard start, had difficulties to mint out, and I think established itself for quite a while between that 0.2 to 0.3 ETH floor price. We haven't touched on that quite a while. The reason why I'm bringing it up is because it's down 50% over the last 24 hours without any major announcement going on their official channels, and has gone down all the way to 0.017 ETH. So basically, even from that 0.2 ETH floor, where it was able to hold itself after mint, down almost 90%. And to finish it off with a positive collection, also one we touched upon quite a few times in the last weeks, Jirasan up another 20%, up 40% over the last 7 days, coming in at a 0.63 ETH floor price.
Like it. Like a lot. Excellent summary of what's going on in the NFT market side. Sam, anything from your side when you're looking at NFTs in general? Then I've got a few thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think there's probably 3 collections, and I think Legendary covered the Jurasun one, and that's clearly coming into the Redacted Airlines flight and the stuff they've been doing behind the scenes. And they've added Pix as a research in residence recently, which is a good value add. I think the on-chain guys on the base side of things, so if you look at the Mintify heat map on that side, it's almost done a 2x, and that's because it's coming into the reveal. So on-chain guys is, you probably would have saw on the timeline some discussions around the questionability around the number of addresses on base. And I think it's just quite interesting to suddenly see their primary NFT collection almost do a 2x coming into that reveal. So there's just like an interesting observation outside of the typical ETH NFT ecosystem. And then on the third, do you want to touch on that one? You got a point?
No, go for it.
Just on the third one, I think the one that I kind of noticed going the opposite way on the ETH side was what was it called? The Cryptodes. So for those that remember back in 2021, this collection was a pretty cool, a classic collection done by sort of Gremlin or Gremlin. So he's like an artist, kind of pixel artist that did that, and it got quite a lot of traction. These things ran up to, I think it was a double-digit ETH floor at the time.
We're sharing it on screen if you're watching in, by the way.
But this, so this collection, it's just been, I don't know, it just kind of dropped off a little bit further, and it makes me feel a little bit sad because this to me is like an OG collection. It's like pixel art, like it was considered one of those collections that you kind of hold for the provenance. But The market just doesn't really seem to care at the moment for this kind of stuff, which is a shame. And I do wonder at some point whether it comes back or not.
Interesting stuff. What was I going to say? I see what you mean with the cryptos. That's really like a classic one. I think people really took that one to heart. I think it went to an absolutely crazy price back in 2021. So definitely a lot of kind of nostalgia tied up in that one, I think. Good other call outs around the place. Seems like in general, there's a bit of more activity on the NFT side for sure. Why don't we get straight into the conversation?
Just before that, I think so. UIT Port on the YouTube comments called out Roktoshi. So for those of you that don't know, so Roktoshi is the founder of NodeMonks,
Yes.
And he made a post yesterday around essentially being a co-founder of Ordinals. So just that kind of backstory, which was quite interesting. I don't know if did we cover that yesterday?
We put in the snapshot yesterday. We didn't necessarily discuss it more. I don't know if there's more to discuss about it necessarily. Like, I don't know. In fact, let's just have a look to see if there's like any bigger implications in terms of the floor price of NodeMonks, perhaps. But Sam, did you want to think through any implications of that?
Well, yeah, because I think so. NodeMonks were at one point considered to be the crypto punks of Ordinals. So I don't know if this just adds to that thesis.
Anything like that, though, people get.
Yeah.
People get
hey,
upset.
I'm just a messenger. Don't shoot me. But yeah, I think that this kind of adds some more credibility to that thesis. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, assuming that volume and interest comes back into Ordinals, then it wouldn't I think this kind of plays into that favor if it's true. I haven't verified it. I've just seen his post around it. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the Ordinal maxis kind of think around this. And maybe we'll have a chat to them over the next week or so.
Yeah, I personally don't think I think it's interesting to note. I don't know if it's going to make a big deal for I didn't even think to check what that might have done to the price action. And now that I'm checking it, you see, I think NodeMonks are basically down 1% in the last 24 hours. They're at 0.11 Bitcoin. Bitcoin puppets are at 0.07, just for context. Yeah, I don't see any of these things, any of that having a huge impact necessarily. I do think this is actually more of a, I don't know if it's a rogue thought. I do think Ordinals are getting to a point where it's like, if you want to go long NFTs in some way, I think Ordinals have been oversold at this point. Like, I appreciate some of that stuff is still pretty expensive, but Bitcoin puppets, in the same way that loads of other things have kind of captured attention on ETH at one point and then like move into this collectible status, I do think some of these will move into that. And 0.07, I mean, I'm just trying to think how much Bitcoin that is. It's still probably like a reasonable amount. But I'm starting to think on the ordinal side now, they're oversold. Just like ETH NFTs got like really, really oversold. And people have started to be like, hang on, why am I messing around with meme coins when these things get just as much attention and they're relatively lower valued at the moment? I think Ordinals might be moving in that direction, to be honest. And also, Ordinals people are like super passionate and really, really care about the ecosystem. So I don't know. That's my thinking. Legendary, do you have a thought on the Ordinal side?
Yeah, I do agree about that. I think it's definitely a stronger community, a more passionate community that has still the potential to gain a lot of momentum and just come back and dominate the timeline once more. It's something that I noticed with Say once we started to touch base with their community more and more, that even though they're not dominating the timeline, they're very, very tight knit, and I have the same feeling about Ordinals. So they're just, for me, an even more volatile momentum asset that definitely has the potential to capture attention span again.
So look, I'm running the numbers here. I've got my little Bitcoin converter out. Let's take some thoughts on this because we've got a couple of minutes before we hit the main discussion points for today. Got my little Bitcoin converter out. 0.07 Bitcoin is $3,968 for a Bitcoin puppet, which you'd probably say, according to this chart. Okay, so it's how is this chart even ordered? Well, it's right up there in terms of the mind share of Ordinals collections, right up there with Node Monks and Runestones and Ordinal Maxis, maybe. So say 4K for a Bitcoin puppet. Node Monks are 0.11, and so 0.11 is, I know I can probably do this in my head, but 6,200. Compare that with like the key NFT on each other chain. So if you think about, I mean, obviously the ETH ones are way more expensive. You've got Pudgies up at like 30, 40K probably at the moment. Well, maybe the ETH's down a little bit, maybe 25K roughly. And let's just check in with Solana here, because this is actually how I like did the Mad Lads trade, or think about some of the stuff. I just like try to compare and see where there's like a discrepancy in the market when you've got like the main headline NFT versus the other main headline NFTs. So let's check in with Mad Lads. Where are they? Here we go. So Mad Lads are 62 Sol at the moment, which is, anyone want to take a guess without doing the numbers? What's 62 Sol?
7 grand. I don't know what Sol's that.
So to me, so that's basically the same as a Node Monk. I frankly think both of them seem a little cheap and could 2x. And I think Bitcoin Puppets are definitely undervalued at 4 with like a 50%. Like, I don't know. Do you think, am I barking up the wrong tree here, Legendary? What are you thinking? This is how I think about NFT trades. And I've actually just put on a different one, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But what's your thinking here?
I don't think that the cross-chain math is that easy to translate, because it's still different ecosystem, different communities with different levels of wealth, and
Sure.
it doesn't translate one-to-one. Like on Solana, would be way less demand for people buying CryptoPunks priced assets. On BTC, you would have more BTC whales who could easily afford that. So I don't think that this maths, even though it's interesting to look at, translates one-to-one across those different chains.
Fair enough, but I mean, I would think that would be even more bullish for the Ordinals then, because I think that they do have the capacity to go more expensive. Sorry.
So I actually want to take the counterpoint to that. I think that it's a great comparison across chain, but then you just apply like a discount or a premium based on the liquidity and the named participants. Then you've got a pretty good representation, or working out how to arbitrage that.
Yeah.
I think that's very reasonable. And I think, and the thing that I think simultaneously to that is the Ordinals should be higher than Solana.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I think. Like, if I had to trade those two, whatever the number they are, I think the Ordinals should be higher. In my opinion, at the moment, although, you know, Mad Lads is a great collection, they're doing good things too. There's probably a token involved in there, so that's like wrapped up in it as well. Whereas Node Monks don't have a token involved, but Quantum Cats do. So like, there's all of those factors that you've got to factor in as well. But that's just a little bit of insight into how I'm thinking about the trades. I'll actually speak about another one in just a little bit, because we're going to be talking about it in just a moment. But let's get into the first discussion point for today, which is the take by the Jirasan founder on NFT founders like supporting other founders, and to what extent it's happening. It was really interesting that so many prominent people actually responded to this tweet. And I wanted to bring that to people's attention because I think this collection is only just coming to people's attention. And B, I think it will surprise people how many like prominent people it's kind of coming on the horizon for now. Disclosure, I am a holder, and this is the collection I'm talking to where I said like I was a buyer. So but I think this was kind of newsworthy anyway. So this was the tweet from Sean, the founder. He said, honestly, how many NFT founders buy NFTs of other collections and tweet and show any form of appreciation to the team and or community? I can recollect 9gag, Amar, Zaim, and Julio, and it's no surprise to see them do well. And I'm glad to say I've never stayed away from supporting any team that reaches out to me for funding or NFTs, but am I missing out on others? Many have a huge ego that prevents them from it. Some argue they don't want to screw their timeline or social campaigns by tweeting about others, but I don't know if I agree it makes sense. Basically suggesting that, look, one of the ways to be successful is to support other people. And if you choose to be more insular and say, no, I need to focus on us, I need to like keep my head down and do the work that we need to do like in your own bubble, suggesting that that's like not the approach to take, when it comes to being out there and successful in the kind of NFT founder universe. Interestingly, a few comments before I come to you for your thoughts. Gordon Gonner actually replied. So founder of Bored Ape Yacht Club, who went on that huge, enjoyable $1 million shopping NFT shopping spree. I think it was at the start of this year. He said, I spent well over $1 million buying from a ton of other NFT projects and artists in the middle of the bear market last year, and kind of tried to make a fun show of it. My perspective is we're all in this together. I think founders should support other founders in their respective ecosystem. Frank also replied to say, I own every NFT. Lol. Remember, Frank did a similar thing, right? When he moved chains from Solana to ETH, went on a crazy shopping spree, buying all kinds of significant collections on ETH. So clearly getting the attention of some pretty prominent people. I want to come to you, Sammy, first, because you mentioned Sean and the redacted coin a little bit earlier. What's your thought on this take first, and then what they've got going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think buying NFTs within each of the sort of prominent projects, it makes sense because you're kind of buying into those communities and you're getting a feel for like how they operate, what the culture is, and then seeing if, I mean, ultimately, like there are mutual benefits. You get cross-pollination of communities. Like I remember back in 2021, like 9gag, before Memeland was kind of a thing, like before it kind of hit the NFT scene, like he did that. He did a massive spree. Like I remember seeing him in the Origins Discord buying up the Genesis passes just to kind of say hi. And he did that across so many different projects. And actually people start to trust him. It's similar with the meme coin sort of celebs that come into the space that just launch a coin. They just seem to be rugs. But if they came in, started buying up some of the tokens, started like interacting with some of the guys in the trenches, it kind of makes sense that they're maybe here to stay. And I think it's similar thesis with NFTs, slightly different, but similar idea that if you're buying into something, you're kind of proving that you're here for at least a medium to long term. Obviously you could sell it, but it just shows you're kind of buying into the culture, buying into the Web3 ecosystem model. And I think that shows a lot of faith and builds trust. So I think it's a net positive. And I completely agree with Sean's take that doing that makes a lot of sense.
It requires capital though, doesn't it? That's the thing. It's just like, yeah, if you've got loads.
It's like it can be a marketing expense from a business standpoint, and it depends on the jurisdiction. But ultimately, if you're buying stuff just to get recognition in terms of a P&L, you could put it down as a business expense, and I don't know, like you wouldn't recognize it as an asset. Like if you're using it specifically for the purpose of networking, it could be marketing.
Yeah, but that's like the same. And I was thinking about this recently from a personal perspective. My accountant was like, yeah, if you want to, you should just always fly business class and you should always just spend stay in like nice places. It's like, yeah, I guess, yes, you can put it down as an expense. That's true. But like, you can't wreck the income needs to justify it all at the same time. Like I'm going away like a relatively reasonable number of times at the moment. And so like the income needs to be there for you to be spending.
Yeah, I mean, if your project makes $1 million in revenue, don't buy an alien crypto punk for a marketing expense because you'd be in a massive loss and you're not going to be a going concern. So yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, so it's that challenge. Legendary, definitely want to bring you in on this. What's your thought here? What's the balance, if there is one?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the other side of this. Obviously, it's a marketing expense, and 9gag CEO Frank Gordon could afford that to do that, and obviously Gordon has been in the space for way longer and has created that NFT hype, so he is trustable per se. But I wouldn't go, because it is a marketing expense, I wouldn't go to that point and say, oh, founders should do that because it's a marketing expense and it makes them trustable. Because if it's just a marketing play and it's worth for you, take gaming. If you come up in gaming and you purchase the most relevant gaming assets, you're just going to spend a few $1,000 because they're so cheap. And then you can, befriend the founders to your mint and still could rug everyone, and have done that in a very profitable way because you didn't need to spend that much money because JPEGs are so cheap. So yes, it's good, but also the intention matters. Do you do it just as a marketing play and have zero intention to interact with these communities? Do you do it publicly to also, because you have a lot of reach, and to give that reach to those projects like Gordon did? That was definitely coming from a different point because he didn't need that to shill anything or to shill any mint. So the intention does matter a lot. I do think it's important to help. But it also can just be a marketing space, and it shouldn't be like an exclusive trust element. If someone has bought a shit ton of NFTs, it doesn't make them trustable. Remember, what was his name? 888 and the Inner Circle. He
Yes.
bought millions of NFTs, and everyone was like, "Oh, he's so trustable." Because of that, did his Inner Circle mint and fucked off in the sunset.
I think we're using one piece of language incorrectly. I don't think anyone actually thinks that spending all this amount of money makes anyone more trustable. It just makes people like them more, like instantly. And I think what all of this stuff, what this does is it just rapidly increases the amount of attention and people who want to interact with you very, very, very rapidly. And yes, some people will be in a more luxurious position in order to kind of take advantage of that, and some people won't be. I don't think you need to do this to be successful, but I definitely think it's a luxurious position to be in, to be able to just throw just completely ignite the fire that you've already got and just make it way, way bigger. Legendary, I think you wanted to come back on that.
Just wanted to say that I absolutely agree with that.
Okay. Look, I don't think we've got time for me to talk through my thinking for this specific trade, but we're going to, maybe I'll talk through that a little bit more tomorrow to give some people some perspective when we do the NFT section. Let's keep it moving. Obviously, we've got all the headlines today. We're going to be thinking about airdrops in a little bit, but before we get there, let's get into our entrepreneurial segment, Publish and Profit, where we explain some of the key secrets and tips to making money online as a creator. Today, I'll focus on an important fear you need to overcome to excel in the content game, the fear of judgment. And I'll explain 3 different ways that fear manifests itself and how you can deal with it. This segment is brought to you by Lil Nouns, an expansion DAO based on the famous Nouns DAO, who fund cool creative endeavors which can proliferate the Nounish meme. So it's pretty difficult to put yourself out there to the world to showcase your skills, provide your opinions, and try to provide value when you do not know how that will be received, or if anyone will find valuable what you have to share. It's pretty common amongst internet creators to obsess over engagement metrics and get paranoid every time the algorithm changes, as it might destroy the attention you've worked so hard to build up. So how do you get over these fears and keep pushing on to achieve your creative goals? I'll explain 3 fears I see and how to deal with them. The first is the fear of no judgment at all. In a weird way, the worst type of judgment is when it's completely absent, when no one even deems your work influential enough to comment on positively or negatively because your work is not yet considered important, useful, or popular. The only way to deal with that is to keep going, because every day is another day to create something better than yesterday, but there are ways to do that. After a period of less far-reaching tweets, Sammy's recent thread on EtherVista hit more than 1,000 likes, 200 retweets, and 335k views. High-effort long-form content will get rewarded eventually. Alternatively, you don't need to go viral if that's not your vibe. People love honesty and real takes, so you can build an authentic audience by being real and not chasing the algorithm. My favorite tweeter in that regard is Turbo, who just fires off the dome, real thoughts and feelings, and people connect with that authenticity. And I think once you figure out what you're trying to achieve and how best to express yourself online, just keep posting. And if you don't know how best to express yourself, keep posting until you do. The second fear is external judgment. Once you start to get a little bigger, people will start to say mean things about the way you go about your business. Sometimes that criticism might be valid, but sometimes it might just be aggressive, angry people online. Valid criticism is actually super helpful, but for every other spiteful and angry post you receive, you have to know the person on the other side cannot be in a good place when they are posting that. I learned this from Gary Vee, who painted this picture. He said, imagine what your life must look like if you not only get angry at someone who you do not know online, but you actually spend your time trying to tear them down for whatever reason. There can't be many better ways for them to spend their time if what they choose to do with their precious time is to hate on you. So don't let them get you down to where they are. Rise above it. I didn't really use social media much when I was younger, and I really needed to hear that as I got older. So random online anger just doesn't hit me anymore. And then finally, internal judgment. Sometimes your harshest critic is yourself. And even if you can deal with other people's judgment, you can kill yourself in your own mind. In Shakespeare's Hamlet, he says, nothing is either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Whilst that's not true all the time, there's definitely an aspect of not spiraling into a dangerous routine of self-annihilation by being so harsh on yourself. What I've always noticed is that the way I've judged myself, sometimes I would never judge anyone else. Maybe sometimes that's helpful, but often it doesn't create the conditions for long-term success. So start to treat yourself like you would a friend. You can be frank and honest and true without cutting yourself up every day. The key conclusion is this: everything you do will be slightly embarrassing to your future self, because your future self will be so much better than you are now. Legendary. What are your thoughts? Those are my reflections. What are you thinking about that?
Love the segment. Love the 3 fears, especially as I started the daily video content thingy, the daily video challenge that I did with the Legendary Minute yesterday, and had the same thought in terms of, what setup am I going to use? Will people react to that? Will anybody care? Are people like more focused on my written content and the things that I do with us on the modern market? And then I was like, yeah, if I could just do it and change and improve the setup every day, because I wanted to do it in such fashion that is easy to do. So not set up the DSLR and the big tripod, like have it as a very compact portable setup. And I was like, will people say the quality is shit? Will someone say your audio quality sounds better on the modern market than on your little video? And you definitely become your own harshest critic in terms of like the internal judgment, and you tend to project that to what the potential external judgment could be. And that can create like a spiral where it's difficult to get out of. But I definitely do agree. Like, I got constructive feedback, got people telling me they loved it. I got people suggesting what else I could do with a segment. But the worst thing definitely would have been if nobody would have cared and had replied anything to it and would like, let it just die with 3 likes and 1 comment, which luckily wasn't the case.
It's funny then. So basically the harshest criticism you received was in your own mind before you even did it.
Yeah, which is good, because then you're prepared for the worst case, right?
I think that's fair. It's like, be prepared for the worst case. Like, know that it could be, or like, and because by thinking that through from the audience perspective, you're genuinely caring and trying to maintain a particular standard, but don't let that overwhelm to prevent the thing even happening in the first place, I think. Sam, what about you? We kind of gave you a shout out there for some of the longer content that you've been writing recently. How do you kind of overcome, when you go through a period of time where you're producing high, because your threads in particular are like high effort, a lot of research time, dropping a lot of knowledge and research onto the timeline, and sometimes they won't go as well, right? So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think most of the time the stuff that hits really well is really timely, and I write it because I can't find the information myself, which then means you have to research it and find all those pieces of information and put those things together. So I think with the Vista specifically, like there wasn't a thread about it. There wasn't any information really, apart from like a bunch of breadcrumbs from screenshots and things that people have posted on the timeline. And then just from the main account. So it's just pulling that together and explaining it in a logical way. But then there is you touched on the fear, and I think that's kind of like, okay, well, once you've written that thread, if it goes well, you're like, okay, shit, well, what's the next one? But the only reason I wrote that,
so even if it goes well, there's fear.
Well, no, I'm exactly that. I'm thinking about the next one. I'm like, okay, well, what else are people interested in? Oh, I've got like writer's block. There's nothing to write about at the moment, and then I kind of have to wait, or I have to keep researching to find something that I find is interesting, that I think the people that kind of follow me find interesting. And I think ultimately that could go like a week, or it could go 2 days, or it could be like the next hour. I'm like, oh shit, there's something else I need to research into and get done straight away. But then balancing that with other commitments, like actually having a life outside of this, it can then be very difficult if it's, I guess it's similar to like consulting days where you have a project and you're all hands on deck for that project. And then once that project's done, you're just like this massive wave of relief. But then you get told there's another project and it's like, okay, well, shit, like I got no time. But yeah, it's like, I think no matter what you do, you're always going to have various doubts or like trying to work out what the next thing is. And it does become a bit of a drug, because you get that hit and then you're looking for the next thing. And similar to you guys, like I haven't done video content from my own account, and I think it's a completely different ball game. So to then go into that, I'm just like, well, that's a completely different neck of the woods. I want to master this and get good at this first. And I've actually pivoted to doing the X articles, and they literally get like 1 like and maybe a retweet, but it's just like, I want to try it. And that's closer to my current like craft than doing video content. So yeah, I think it just depends, but ultimately getting out of your comfort zone is the main thing.
I love it. Love that final message. Before we move on and get to all the main headlines in just a little bit, Funky, your hand is raised. Welcome to the stage, my friend. Wanted to give you a chance to comment on this discussion.
First and foremost, I just love the segment. I love the advice. I love everything that you just mentioned, B. I think that those are really great takes. Same for Legendary and Sammy. Maybe it's because I'm 49 and I'm not necessarily a content creator, so I know that this is coming from a different place. But we all deal with this kind of social fear, embarrassment, so on and so forth. It's just part of how we're wired as human beings. And one of the things that has really freed me mentally from a lot of this is just the fact that I know that someday I'm going to be dead. I'm going to be gone, and most likely not really remembered 2 or 3 generations down the road, right? Outside of family. I'm cosmic dust, as we all are. And I only say that because it really is empowering when you realize that you got to get up every day and just absolutely go for broke, regardless of what the results are. As long as you're putting in your best effort, that's all that really matters.
Love it, man. I'll add that to the notes. Final point, just imagine yourself dead and no one will remember you. I take the point. I'm kind of being a bit facetious, but you know.
I actually like something that I remember before my gran passed away was literally, she said to me, live life to your fullest. And I think if you've got someone who's lived like 99 years saying that, it's like, that's some pretty good feedback. And I think the older we get, the more we kind of gain that wisdom. So yeah, I love what you've said, Funky.
Like it. Got a little bit deep there, guys. Appreciate the deep conversation. Appreciate the honest conversation. We'll always try to touch on some of those honest things that we basically all go through, whether we're specific content creators, founders, traders. I think we all kind of encounter some of those feelings and sometimes need to express it. So hope that was interesting for you guys. Let's get into the main headlines for today, because I know you've been waiting for those. We've got Eigenlayer, Dookie Dash, and Grass airdrop to discuss. Legendary, let's go to you straight away for the Eigenlayer update to get a sense of what's going on here with Ethereum's biggest restaking protocol.
Let's do it. There's 3 parts to the Season 2 stake drop by EigenLayer. One is for the stakers and operators, one is for the ecosystem partners, one is for the community members. It's going to be loads and loads of details to process. So I'm not going to go into everything, but rather focus on the end user. And that's definitely more relevant from the staker and from the community member perspective. So I'm not going to go too much into what roll-ups, AVSs, et cetera, receiving as rewards.
Sure.
One important note before we start this, that also the Eigen Foundation made, that the reward quantities for LRT, so liquid restaking token protocols, is 100% identical to everyone else participating in EigenLayer through staking. So that basically applies to all the LRTs equally.
The LRTs, you mean like Renzo, EtherFi, all those types of protocols?
Exactly. Everyone who does liquid restaking and is obviously using EigenLayer for that as a basis.
Sure.
The first part of the distribution, they call it the stake drop. So obviously it goes to stakers. They have 4.2% of the FTV, 70 million Eigen allocated to that. And everyone is rewarded who actively staked and operated nodes during Season 2, with the snapshot being mid-August, so August 15th. The claim will open on or before September 17th. So basically when we also expect that the token itself will go live. In the blog article, which is pretty helpful, they also provided a calculator, which basically allows you to come up with your estimation of the Eigen price, and uses the current ETH price to kind of calculate your rewards rate for the restaking. So definitely interesting if you want to play around with that and do a bit of
interesting.
Yeah, if you want to do a bit of moon math, they provide you a tool for that, which is actually a pretty smart thing to do if you think about the content that can be created around that. Again, ecosystem partners, they receive 10 million Eigen, 0.6% of the entire FTV. I'm gonna skip that because probably not relevant for anyone as an end user listening to us in the audience. Then the very interesting part is the community part, 6 million Eigen. So a bit less than the ecosystem partners, but still 0.35% of the FTV with the same snapshot date. And they reward quite a few actions that have been taken in the past. Devs who have contributed to the GitHub, 1.6 million Eigen tokens. That's 25% of the entire community allocation to X users who have, before April 1st, 2024, actively discussed Eigenlayer on Twitter, and the
What?
rewards for that are based on the engagement.
Damn.
Same for podcasts. Basically, all those contents, I'm not going to repeat myself all the time, have this cutoff date of April 1st. People who discussed Eigenlayer on the podcasts, the most active Discord members before April 1st.
Hang on a minute. Does that mean we get anything?
Have you been active in their Discord?
No, for the podcast. Does this count as a podcast? I think it does. Let's call it a podcast instead of a live show.
Yeah, that's. Did we upload to Spotify and Apple Music before April?
I don't know. I can't remember. Maybe.
Could be a very, very tight cutoff for that. Same for Farcaster. A bit less, obviously, in terms of the rewards. Farcaster gets 1/10 of the X rewards, but with the same criterion applied.
Interesting.
Even analysts, so people who put together dashboards on Dune or on Flipside, get rewarded with the same amount as Farcaster users. Mirror users who wrote about Eigenlayer get also rewarded. And last but not least, people who participated in Eigenlayer related hackathons also get a token reward.
This is very, very interesting. This is the most, and I'm speaking about this from two perspectives, actually. One, from the content creator perspective, which I see lots of content creators who are in the audience and who I know would be interested in this. And frankly, we're all producing content online, tweeting and whatever. So from that perspective is interesting. But also from their side, the way that I've just never seen protocols distribute that broadly across the board to content creators. This is basically like a content creator reward program for season 2 of Eigenlayer, right?
Yeah, and one point that I would like to add to that, it's not over. They still have 3% remaining of the 15% total allocation for the community that will be distributed in further programs to the community. So definitely still worth to keep an eye on what initiatives they will have in the future to reward content, because they go, this blog article shows that they go very, very broad. Didn't see any airdrop before that looked at podcasts, Mirror, podcasts, X, Discord equally, and came up with reward metrics for each of those content verticals.
I love it. I love it from two perspectives. One, from their perspective that they want to distribute so widely, and second, from our perspective, where it's like, okay, I didn't really know that we were in the mix for this kind of stuff. And because Eigenlayer is such a huge protocol, it is how would you describe it? The landmark ETH restaking protocol, at least as things stand. Maybe Symbiotic will become as big when they open their caps. But when big protocols like this set the precedent, sometimes you can see other protocols be like, oh, this is how they rewarded people. Maybe we should do similar things. Legendary, you're nodding along. Maybe a final take before we go to Sammy on the other protocol.
Yeah, absolutely. One important point to note for everyone who thinks that they might be eligible for any of that community action, you actually have to go to verify.eigenfoundation.org and attach a wallet address to your social handle by September 11th. So you have 6 days to do that. And they also say that they expect a lot of traffic. So if it doesn't work, just revisit it the next day or a couple hours later. But you have to take an active action in order to be eligible to even claim those rewards if you made qualifying content.
Do you know what? There's definitely a modern market wallet which is restaking and has Eigen in it. So let's try that. We'll try that and let people know to see if it works, because I'm sure there's content we've been posting about Eigenlayer across the board. And yeah, we'll let you guys know if it works. If it does, that's really good for all of us involved. Just a quick point from me, Sammy, I'm going to come to you on the Grass protocol in a second, because we're probably running short on time for today. So we'll come to you for your insight there. Quick point from me on the pre-markets for Eigen. It's above $3 on Wales market with total volume of 1.8 million, 24-hour volume at 163,000. So there's definitely been like an uptick in volume around this announcement time. Not a huge amount of volume in general, still probably more than other stuff, with the huge caveat, as always, that these pre-market prices are not necessarily super reliable. Although this is one of the occasions where Eigen's been trading pre-market for quite a long time. So I suspect it's, if I had to guess, if it would be more or less reliable, I'd say it would be more reliable than the token that starts doing some pre-market trading and only gives it a chance for like 5 days before the token goes live, because this has been trading pre-market for months, even though with the caveat, not a crazy amount of volume. So that's just a little update there. Go and check if you're eligible. And let's do the Web3 roundup first, get you up to with everything else that's happening. Then we're going to get into Grass protocol and the Bored Ape news too. So from the snapshot, which is pinned up top in the Twitter space, news number 1, CoinDesk reports Trump World Liberty Financial lending platform will allocate 70% of its tokens to insiders. We are once again imploring the Trump family not to do this, if that is something that they might listen to. Next, EtherVista announces opportunity to create safe tokens on their DEX. Interesting news coming out of Puffpaw on Berachain. Puffpaw announces $6 million in seed funding to build Vape to Quit, Smoking and Earn. Love trying to monetize every kind of obscure social vice or habit. In other news, Uniswap Labs resolved CFTC matter with a 170k fine. Geosound official NFTs move up 17% in 24 hours to a 0.63 ETH floor. We spoke about that already. Gordon Goner announces new project to pierce the social bubble of crypto and NFTs and bring attention back to Bored Ape Yacht Club, who had a whole blockbuster of announcements coming out yesterday, which we're going to touch on in a second. And then finally, DGods adds map functionality for holders to see other holders. This is something Chimpers did a long time ago. They've been doing this map functionality for ages. Works really, really well. I think community people really, really like that, so they can arrange their own kind of decentralized community meetups. There's a lot of excitement there around that type of functionality. And then let's get into the Grass news then, Sam. That's the Web3 roundup. I think you were a bit closer to Grass, which was, people are exceptionally bullish on Deepin, exceptionally bullish on like these types of protocols. So do you want to explain what Grass was, why you thought it was interesting, and why people are bullish on Deepin?
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, Grass probably launched, I want to say it was almost a year ago now. I think I got involved probably November, October last year. So one of the early ones trying to download effectively an application. Now, what that application was, so we see this term Deepin thrown around, and that stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Network. So ultimately what you're doing there is you're kind of using your smartphone as a node in the network to provide bandwidth to the network in exchange for points. Now those points are officially being converted into the Grass token, which is on Sol. So I think a couple of months ago we were asked to connect our Solana wallets to that particular app, so that we could claim those tokens. But what the news that's dropped today is the eligibility checker has gone live. So the actual claim is not live yet. So any claims are a scam. Do not click them.
Sure.
So ultimately, like this network is, I think it's probably one of the leading Deepin networks. I think there's 1 billion tokens in total. 10% is allocated in the first airdrop. There was various epochs. So I think there was 1 to 7 epochs, and based on those like periods of time, you kind of allocated a portion of that 10% based on your activity. So how much bandwidth you've given up to the network. So in exchange, you effectively receive those tokens. So I think the closed alpha, which was the very early stage, got about 1.5%. Epochs 1 to 7 got 7%. There was a bonus epoch of 0.5%, and they've left 1% to be announced, which I suspect will probably be given arbitrarily depending on people's activity. Sure. Now, for those of you that remember the Solana mobile, those that got access to that probably were able to download the app and get into that early access alpha phase and get grinding on that. So I was one of those. I actually distributed a spreadsheet with a bunch of airdrops back last year. Grass was one of them, and I think I got about 200 referrals. And as a result of those referrals, you take a percentage of the bandwidth given by all your referees. Ooh. And therefore you tip over the various thresholds. However, I don't know whether it was that lucrative based on the numbers that I've been floating around. So I saw one guy that's got more points than me. I think he got like 8,000 tokens. And if you think about, there's 1 billion Grass tokens that in the total supply, 10%, so 100 million are going to be airdropped, like this thing's going to have to come out at a significant market cap or FTV for it to be worth something substantial. But ultimately, I think it's a cool application. You're effectively, any unused bandwidth you're going to get paid for. So for me, it's like a subsidy to your internet bill. I wouldn't expect it too much beyond that.
Okay, I think that's pretty interesting. Excellent summary, so people can get a handle of what's going on here. 2 questions from me. First question is, well, I've got the website up here. People can see it on screen if they are watching into. Just going to zoom in a little. I don't remember there being this like focus on AI before. Is this a recent pivot, or in terms of just comms? When you go to the section of what is Grass and how does it work, it says Grass is the underlying infrastructure that powers AI models. By installing Grass, the application will automatically sell your unused internet to AI companies who use it to scrape the internet and train their models. The result, you share in the growth of AI, earning a stake in the network for contributing a resource you didn't even know you had. So in principle, it's a kind of a really cool idea that you're sharing your unused internet with other people. You can like take a little bit of a cut from that kind of sharing process. But this seems to now say this is like an AI focused thing. Was that a recent pivot, Sam? Do you remember this? What's your thought?
So DePIN, so decentralized physical infrastructure, is effectively a way of gathering sort of unused bandwidth for these LLMs, so large language models, to actually produce.
So it's specifically for LLMs always.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly.
Oh,
so
okay.
Obviously they've got to have some sort of revenue model. So they're going to sell on your unused bandwidth for that purpose, and that's the biggest appetite for that particular data at the moment. So that's kind of the key driver. I do think there'll be other uses for it, but predominantly, I do think they are kind of leaning into this AI wave that we had over the past couple of years. But ultimately, there will be other use cases for it, and they will sell it to the various providers that need that access. So
okay, that's a great little clarification. Maybe just my final reflection on price before we move on, because we have to for time. It does seem like the lazier or the easier it is to participate in some type of drop, the harder it is to achieve a higher valuation. That's not always the case. For example, with Eigenlayer, you could just dump the ETH in and then it was worth loads later. But it does feel like, I don't know, the market's kind of saturated, and the easier it is, the harder it is for the company to kind of really provide significant value from just depositing or just sharing something. So we'll see how that distribution works out. Let's just hit the Bored Ape news in the last few minutes of the show, because there's actually multiple pieces of news. So the first piece, which I included in the snapshot today, was this one about the re-emergence of Dookie Dash. So Dookie Dash is back. Remember, this is like a fairly straightforward, fun game where apes kind of racing through to for a prize. So the prize is $1 million. It begins on September the 12th, which is 1 week away. You can download it from the App Store or on Google Play. I think that's pretty exciting, number one. Number two, they also released yesterday 3 things on the same day. We're releasing something in a can, said Crypto Gaga. Bored Ape with BAYC and the Bored Brewing Company present the limited edition Bored Ape beer coming in September. And I'm showing this on the screen for the people who are watching in. Also looks pretty cool. And then finally, the final interesting, cool piece of news, or big partnership news, was Bored Ape Bimmer Club. BMW and Bored Ape are partnering to create a 1-to-1 ape car with 1 Bored Ape community artist. 5 Bored Ape community artists were selected by BMW and Bored Apes to reimagine the exterior of a unique 2025 model that will be revealed at Ape Fest Lisbon. Legendary, maybe just throwing to you first, just for like a final take on these collection of Bored Ape pieces of news. Also, maybe in reference to Gordon Gonner's like increased appearance on the timeline, Gaga getting a bit more vocal on the timeline as well. What's exciting you most coming out of Bored Ape Yacht Club, and how you thinking about it?
I think probably for me it would be Doogie Dash. I had tons of fun playing that game. I hired pro gamers back then. Obviously not going to be worth it right now because the pro gamers are going to play for themselves, but it was nonetheless an enjoyable game. But what really excites me is the sentiment on the timeline. Seen multiple apes saying, it feels like new Bored Ape feels like old Bored Ape. New vibes feel like old vibes. So definitely have seen that good sentiment on the timeline. This is ultimately what they try to achieve. And I think we've spoken about the fact how difficult it is if you start out as counterculture, became mainstream, to get back to those early vibes without becoming cringy. And it seems that these announcements go in the right direction and have been well received. So that's definitely exciting to see.
I like it. 60 seconds left. Sammy, you want to come in with something here?
I'm just keen to see if Mongol reclaims his title for his second key. So this was the winner of the first one, by the way.
Yeah, I remember they won that key and sold it for, how much was it?
1.8 million, I think, or something ridiculous like that. I think 9gag was the second bid. I can't remember who actually got the winning bid.
Yeah, it was someone else who was the actual winner. But look, I remember the one criticism. This is what my final point on this before we close out. I remember there being like a reasonable amount of criticism to say, like, maybe it wasn't criticism, but one comment being like, I don't know, the game's too simple, it's too straightforward. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter. Like, you just want people to have fun playing a game. Like, there's all kinds of simple games that adults play, that kids play, that various different types of people play. And when you throw money into it as well, then that just pours more excitement on top of it. And I think it's completely fine for competitions to try to set themselves up. So like, look, this is a fun game. Might be a straightforward game, might be a simple game, but it's a fun game. We're going to throw money into the mix and get people competing. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's completely a normal part of stimulating some competition and excitement. And on that note, let's close out for the day. Thank you so much for joining us. We do this every single day, Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. Eastern time for 1 hour. Thank you to my legendary co-host, Legendary, and Sammy and Funky, who's up on stage, who contributed today. Have a wonderful day. We'll be back again tomorrow, same time, same place, on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, and hopefully in your minds when we see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.